All right, so we are going to get started. Good morning. My name is Amy Maes. I am the Director of Access Services for Disability Network Eastern Michigan. I'm also the statewide coordinator for Access Services for the collective network of Centers for Independent Living around Michigan. I am an older white woman with blonde hair, short stature, and am wearing a blue shirt. I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming you to the Responsible AI, Assistive Technologies, and Digital Accessibility session. This session will explore guiding principles for more disability-inclusive AI, the Department of Justice ruling related to WCAG 2.1 AA, and the Federal Technology Act of 1988, current accessibility gaps, and policy recommendations. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping matters to review. There are ASL interpreters and CART services in every session. If you have communication issues during the session, please let us know. Please identify your name before speaking. The first rows of seating are reserved for those with vision or fragrance-free needs. If you wish to comment or pose a question, we have note cards on each of the tables to submit questions and to staff to collect those. If you prefer comment individually, please indicate and a microphone will be brought to you. This session will last approximately an hour and 15 minutes. After the session, please return to the main plenary room for lunch and the plenary session. Thank you for attending this session. I want to introduce the panel at this moment. We have Dana Justice from DTMB, Dr. Sarahelizabeth Baguhn from the American Foundation for the Blind, Kellie Blackwell from the Bureau for Blind Services, the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons, thank you. A full bio of their panelists, of their bios can be found on the Whova app if you want to download that. And before the discussion begins, we have a few ground rules for the discussion. Please keep discussions focused on the workshop topic, specifically broad policy implications. We would like to end this session with 2 or 3 specific policies. Recommendations to promote accessibility in the digital world. We are unable to address individual complaints or circumstances in this session. There will be time allotted in the question and answers at the close of the session. We welcome comments for potential solutions for issues being discussed. And as earlier mentioned, there are note cards that will be provided on the table if you'd like to provide a question. And finally, inappropriate, inflammatory, or disrespectful behavior or language will not be tolerated. Those in violations of this requirement will be warned once and then asked to leave. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Sarahelizabeth Baguhn. Sarahelizabeth is a research specialist from the American Foundation for the Blind. She conducts research with AFB into harms, biases, and opportunities presented by artificial intelligence for people who are blind or who have low vision. Today, she'll be discussing the recent AFB study, Empowering or Excluding New Research and Principles for Inclusive AI.
Thank you so much. This is Sarahelizabeth Baguhn, and I'm so happy to be here to talk to you today. You should have in front of you or in the Whova app our recommendations and policy guidelines that came out of this study. So I'm going to take just a few minutes at the start here to talk about what data we collected, what we analyzed, and what we learned that led to those guidelines. And then when we get to the interactive portion, I'm going to ask you to tell me what you think about one of those guidelines and how it would come into play in your agency or environment. So the American Foundation for the Blind has been very interested in the interface between technology and people with disabilities, and our AI research series is a cross-disability effort where we are collaborating with folks from a wide range of disability specialties, backgrounds, and silos. We recognize that AI can create risks of discrimination, privacy violations, or other harms, and also that AI has the opportunity to enhance assistive technology and provide more opportunities. Luckily for me, my notes just decided that they were going to fully shut off, so that's fine. We'll just talk. So we did an AI study where we collected 32 different experts from industry, policy, and disability rights to talk about what they thought is coming next in AI. What are going to be the benefits? What are going to be the harms? What are the likely consensus points? And we used a Delphi study, which is a method of getting experts to agree on something as a good metric for predicting what's going to happen. So we asked the people to generate what they think is coming in AI, and then we took all of those hundreds of statements and sent them back to the group and asked everyone to rate, yeah, I think this is definitely gonna happen, or no, I think Joe Schmo is wrong about that. It's not gonna happen because, and then they give us a reason. And we used all of those statements in several rounds of surveys to identify what the experts think is coming. That includes things like there will be benefits for people who are blind and low vision. Image description has been an ongoing area of need in our community, and AI and large language models paired with computer vision give us real opportunities to have instant on-demand image description at any time, at any place, controlled by the user. So that's a great boon to accessibility, that we're gonna have better assistive technologies. You won't always have to dial a friend to find out what the picture is of. There were other opportunities for people with disabilities, such as improved captioning services in an automated fashion. Obviously, human captions remain the best, the gold standard, but in a pinch, if AI captions can be more accurate than they've been historically, it would be nice for the bare minimum accessibility to improve along as well. We saw opportunities for transportation. There was great consensus that large data sets and AI analysis of those models can be used to improve community accessibility, that we could identify the places and sidewalks where there has been a breakdown in maintenance to target where can we fix next, what needs to be prioritized, and what needs to get addressed first. There's also some dissent in the transportation area. Anybody know what the biggest, most hot button issue in transportation and AI is right now? I'm waiting for community participation, see if anybody's gonna shout it out. Self-driving cars. So our experts, some of them said, you are going to have self-driving cars within 5 years. They are coming, they're coming to a neighborhood near you. You will be able to use them. And others of our experts said, no, no, no. There's a technical glitch that you're not aware of. There's a policy barrier you're not thinking about. This is not coming as fast and as furious to a neighborhood near you as you are hoping. And so we don't have agreement on that. They don't all agree that it's not coming. They don't all agree that it is coming. That's one where we say you'd have to watch and wait and see what's going to unfold. We can't be sure with autonomous vehicles how they're going to roll out. They're gonna cause some kind of disruption. They technically exist and they can do some kinds of work, but how quickly they'll be adopted and whether they'll be adopted for individual users remains to be seen. We had wonderful consensus around issues of civil rights. Our experts, including our experts from industry, whose job it is to develop the technologies, agreed that we need to have policies in place to protect the privacy rights of users, that it will not be sufficient to leave that open. Folks' privacy rights won't just self-resolve. We will need to somehow come together and write some policies that protect people's right to privacy, that protect individuals with disabilities' right to privacy specifically, and protect access. Lots of things came out in the study that revealed there is the potential for AI to notice that someone has a disability when that is not the purpose of the AI. There's AI used in workforce surveillance to make sure people are on task or on their computers or doing what they're supposed to be doing at work all of the time. Well, those systems that use big number sets to watch how people behave, of course, notice when someone behaves in a different pattern of work than the majority, and that's often a signal for a disability. So how will we agree as a society we're going to control the privacy of what it notices so that it's not disclosing people's disabilities to their employers? These are just a sample of the sorts of statements that the experts all agreed on during our study. And we use those to generate our policy guidelines, which you have in front of you in some paper copies or in your Whova app. And these policy guidelines are not written in the sense that this is a law that the government should adopt. but rather are guidelines for you to consider at any point that you touch assistive technology that engages with artificial intelligence or artificial intelligence more broadly. So if you're in an HR department and AI could screen applications and help filter which ones should you look at and which ones can you just pass on over, how do you control to make sure that it's not putting every single person with a disability in the Passover stack just because they have a disability? AI learns from the patterns of human behavior in many cases, and our human behavior contains our own biases. And the magic of AI is it takes those patterns and amplifies them, which is not great if it's amplifying our own biases. So we need to have humans in the loop, providing control and connection to review what the AI is recommending and ensure that it's not recommending something that's harmful to our population. With that, I'm curious from the audience, as you look at those policy guidelines, do you see any guidelines that you think you could use in your role or your agency? And what would it look like if you engaged that policy guideline in deciding how to act or operate? Maybe our microphone runner could take one or two answers.
So my name is Cheryl. My last name is Myers. I live in Oakland County. So my company has a policy that bans using AI, and the reason is because we record our trainings and our presentations. So what do you recommend we do about that situation? Because our policy currently on the company right now, on the guidelines, it says that we ban AI.
Absolutely, that is a great question. And I know if you have a chance to read through all of our policy guidelines, they are numerous. One of them is to allow acceptable use of AI as an assistive technology. And so if someone needs it as an assistive tech, that should follow your company's existing policy on how do you request an accommodation and how is that accommodation approved. And then that process is always intended to be cooperative between an employer and a person with a disability. In an idealized gold standard world, right, we would work together with our employers to come up with what meets my needs if I need an AI note taker or if I need an AI tool to be able to work more efficiently and more effectively. And you have this security concern that we record our trainings and we don't want the AI model to have access to all of our content. Where do we meet in the middle on that? Does it mean that I use an AI tool that is run on the server of my employer, and so all of our data stays internal and is still gapped from the cloud? It's not being given back to a larger model, but is on a model we run locally? That's a technical thing that can happen, but it requires your company to buy an AI model and run a copy of it on a local server, which might be a point at which they say, actually, it's not worth that investment to us. We're okay with the mild security risk. Or we're okay with using a particular AI tool that has an agreement that says they will not glean our data. So I think it needs to be a back and forth conversation between a person and an employer to understand how can both of your needs be met together.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And as I said earlier, we will have a question and answer session at the end of today's workshop, this morning's workshop, so that you can have a better chance to delve deeper. Next, I would like to turn our attention to assistive technology, and please help me in welcoming our next speaker, Kellie Blackwell. Kellie is 9 days into her new job with the Bureau for Blind Persons, and she formerly worked with the Michigan Disability Rights Coalition Michigan Assistive Technology Program. She's also a certified rehabilitation counselor and has a wealth of information to share with us today. I've worked with Kellie on and off for over 20 years, and she has so much practical, good application to provide to you on assistive technology. So thank you, sir. All right. Thank you, Kellie.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here, and as Amy said, I am 9 days into my new role at the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons. Previously, I was with the Michigan Assistive Technology Program as the program director, and so I have a passion for assistive technology, and especially as it relates to digital access, as I am a screen reader user, and so having accessibility in digital spaces is especially important. Having accessibility in all places is important. So before I get started in some legislation as it relates to assistive technology, I was wanting to hear from a couple of audience members about when you hear assistive technology, what are some things that you think of? And I'll take maybe just two folks if you want to participate. So when you hear assistive technology, what is it that comes to mind? So I'm hearing over here accommodations.
Hi, my name is Jackie, and I'm an educational advocate, and I work with a lot of nonverbal students, so things like automatic talkers, AAC devices.
Yep. So AAC devices, or augmentative and alternative communication devices, help individuals who need communication access. That is certainly a type of assistive technology. To speak to my experience with the assistive technology program and then just my general experience with assistive technology overall, assistive technology is really any tool, device, equipment, software, anything that is going to help an individual with a disability or an older adult gain access to the activities and things that they want to do on a daily basis. So it differs from technology in that technology, like our phones or computers or whatever it might be, they can help individuals gain, they can help make things easier for most people when they're working properly, I will add. But assistive technology opens up possibilities for individuals with disabilities. So it's not just technology. So yes, I have a phone, but I'm actually using my phone today as assistive technology, as I'm using the built-in voiceover screen reader. I'm using the timer function and some other things as I go through today's presentation. I wanted to touch on the historical prevalence of assistive technology and the legislation that surrounds it in a few different areas, and then I wanted to speak to the statewide assistive technology program and then bring up a few ideas that sort of help with policy and systems change. So statewide, there is an assistive technology program that is housed at Michigan Disability Rights Coalition, but federally speaking, there is federal legislation known as the Assistive Technology Act that states that each individual state, as well as a handful of U.S. territories, has an assistive technology program. All the way back in 1988, there was the Tech Act first came on the scene, and it allowed for some access to assistive technology. Fast forward a little bit to 1994, and you have the first iteration of the Assistive Technology Act, but it still wasn't as robust as it is today. And then in 1998, there was some amendments, and then 2004, and then it took until 2022 to get the newest version of the Assistive Technology Act into legislation, and that is known as the 21st Century Assistive Technology Act, which it kept a lot of the same language that was in the 2004 version. However, it added a few pieces that are key to the success for people with disabilities and for older adults, and those being areas like transportation, housing, and there's a few other areas, but those are the higher points. So assistive technology, the Assistive Technology Act sort of has a broad scope of making sure that individuals have access to and knowledge of assistive technology options. And what's great about the program is that there's no medical documentation needed. It's you can self-identify as having a disability. You can be a family member working with an individual with a disability and have access to the program. And the program provides demonstrations, loans in some instances, reuse in some instances, just general information, but it gets technology to those, assistive technology to those that need it. That's sort of a high-level overview. And then, so that's sort of out of the, what do I want to say? It's the larger picture, if you will, for anyone to access. And then you have other legislation that promotes access to assistive technology in the schooling arena. So the K-12 is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, has language in there that students have access to assistive technology, like the AAC devices that were mentioned. You also have the language in the Free and Appropriate Public Education, or FAPE, that says students with disabilities have access to the education that everyone else has access to. And then you have things like the 504, which also covers healthcare, that says students and individuals with disabilities can have access by way of assistive technology. So those are, and then you have other programs, for example, with Medicaid and waiver services. Individuals who qualify for waiver services can have access to assistive technology. So you have all of these different areas that promote access to assistive technology. But then you have the barriers of the systems, right, that prevent people from knowing about assistive technology, how to gain access, to obtain assistive technology, and all of those great, wonderful things that systems can create barriers to. So just a couple of ideas that I wanted to put into the universe in terms of policy and changing the landscape is just using education as an example. Students should have access to appropriate assistive technology. Some of the barriers to that can come into play when not each school system or county or statewide, they don't work with the same process or approach. So that can create barriers. So one school district might have X, Y, and Z, and then another school system might be working with A, B, and C. So not having that uniformity of how students can gain access to assistive technology and the type of assistive technology that is available. So those are some barriers there. One second. So that statement I said of when technology works, it's great. And Sarahelizabeth experienced that too. My notes here are having a mind of their own. So a couple of ideas that I came up with when I was thinking of, gosh, what would accessibility look like beyond just being compliant? And when I think of accessibility, and assistive technology, I first thought of universal design. So universal design was a concept that came into practice when maybe it started out with folks using assistive technology, but then folks realized that, oh, these are things that can help everyone. So when you think of those curb ramps or automatic doors or light switches that are positioned differently, so policies that can address systems issues and sort of thinking futuristically a little bit. When someone goes to a business, a hospital, whatever it might be, having assistive technology paired with that universal design concept so that everyone has a similar experience and has access to the things that they need. Another policy, or I think it should be a policy, when you think of individuals with disabilities in the media, how folks are portrayed, and then taking that a step further with assistive technology, what kinds of images and messaging is with media specifically, with people with disabilities and using assistive technology. Generally, when we see individuals interacting with assistive technology when it comes to media, it's those things that you might think of when people are sick or not feeling well or can't do certain things. So let's shift that narrative and focus on the positive, prideful aspects of assistive technology and disability. So that is what I've got for my time, I think.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yes.
Please now welcome us, or help me in welcoming Dana Justice. She's with the State Department of Technology Management and Budget, the Center for Shared Solutions. She's the manager in Michigan, managing digital accessibility testing. Today she'll be explaining the new Department of Justice rule as it relates to Title II of the ADA, and she will be addressing what is happening at the state level as they prepare for coming into compliance with WCAG 2.1 AA.
Thank you, Amy. This is Dana. Waiting on some slides to come up on the screen behind me before I get started. All right. All right, so we're going to start with digital accessibility. What is it? Now, many of you already know about this, but we want to keep the focus on the people. So we're going to start with kind of rehashing what is digital accessibility. It is the design and development of digital content, applications, and services that are usable by all people. The inclusive practice of removing barriers that prevent interaction with or access to websites, digital tools, and technologies by people with disabilities, and ensuring that people can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the web. So both of the speakers before me, both Kelly and Sarahelizabeth, spoke on this a little bit, but in overcoming barriers to access, there are several assistive technologies out there. In order to have systems that are considered digitally accessible, they need to work well with those assistive technologies. So for visual needs, including blindness, low vision, and color vision deficiencies, we must ensure that color contrast, variable font sizes, alt text, and screen reader compatibility are key. For physical, for those affecting mobility, such as weakness and limitations of muscular control, we must ensure that keyboard access is fully functional without need for a mouse. For auditory, which ranges from partial hearing loss to deafness, transcripts must be reviewed and revised. Automated voice detection is not 100% accurate. And for cognitive load, it involves challenges with memory, attention, and problem solving, such as dyslexia and ADHD. So we need to ensure that content is understandable at a reading level that is appropriate for your audience. And for speech, there is difficulty with speech interactions such as muteness, stuttering, and cluttering. Voice input is not solely relied upon for a system. We must provide alternatives to speech interaction. So those are just a few examples of some of the things that as we're designing systems, we need to take into consideration to make sure that our assistive technologies and other interfaces are fully functional for individuals, for all people. So we're going to go through what is the American with Disabilities Act, the ADA. Most of you are probably really familiar with this, but the federal law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in employment, state and local government, public accommodation, commercial facilities, transportation, and telecommunications. Title I relates to employment and requires that employers provide individuals with disabilities equal opportunity and prohibits discrimination. And Title II relates to activities of state and local government. Individuals with disabilities must be given equal opportunity to benefit from programs, activities, and services. So our focus is on Title II. So there was a rule change made to Title II of the ADA. So prior to April 24th of 2024, so this was last year, Title II required that state and local governments make sure that their services, programs, and activities are accessible to persons with disabilities. And Title II applies to all services, programs, or activities of state and local government, from adoption services to zoning regulation, including services, programs, and activities that state and local government offer online and through mobile applications. However, prior to the 24th of 2024, the ADA did not contain a specific technical standard. So they said, thou must be accessible, but they didn't really tell us how. So after April 24th of 2024, the rules set a specific technical standard that state and local governments must follow to meet their existing obligations under Title II of the ADA for web and mobile app accessibility. The technical standard set is WCAG 2.1 Level AA. That stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So for the state, what that means is all new and existing websites and applications, including content and mobile applications, must conform to WCAG 2.1 AA by April 24th of 2026. So that is for all populations with more than 50,000 individuals. For public entities with less than 50,000 individuals, they have until April 26th of 2027, so they get one more year. So what is in scope? What all is covered within this Title II rule change? Big focus on the state, since that's what I work for, but this applies to everyone, for all local, state, and local government entities, as well as state government entities. External systems and content used to provide a program, service, and/or activity of a public entity includes web and mobile applications, systems that are developed in-house or procured from a vendor, new applications and existing applications, on-premise and externally hosted, customized off-the-shelf, subscription as a service, and software as a service, as SaaS. Additionally, content on websites, conventional documents such as PDFs, word processing, and spreadsheets, as well as social media posts. There are some exceptions out there that are in Title II of the ADA. That includes pre-existing social media posts, so that's posts made prior to the date of the state or local government must comply with that rule change. Pre-existing electronic documents, which must be word processing, presentation, PDF, or spreadsheet files that were created before the date that the entity must comply. Archived web content, which is content that must have been created before the date the entity must comply, and it must only be used for reference in a special area as archived information. Individually password protected documents. So these are documents that are for a specific individual that are in word processing, presentation, PDF, or spreadsheet format and are password protected or otherwise secured. Something such as an invoice might be something in that category. Content posted by independent third party. That's content that must be posted by a third party where they're not posting due to a contractual licensing or other arrangement with a public entity. So now we're going to talk a bit more about the state of Michigan efforts and what we've been doing, not just recently, but for the past several years. We have been collaborating across departments, so subject matter experts, also referred to as SMEs, have been connecting across Department of Civil Rights, Department of Technology Management and Budget, Office of State Employer, MDHHS. We've had several people involved in various work groups over the past several years to help us develop policy and influence process. Our departments also have their own work groups to discuss accessibility topics and share resources to their staff. For instance, the DNR, Department of Natural Resources, has one called the A-Team that has been in place since the 1990s. So this has been a topic that has been discussed at the state for quite some time. Additionally, outreach. So our teams do communicate with other states and public entities, and unique insights and shared experiences are gathered, communicating on work groups that are multi-state efforts. We have a seat, I believe it's on the NASIO cross-state conversation that's happening right now across, I believe, state of Colorado, state of Maine, and potentially Maryland. A couple others are talking all about digital accessibility right now. We do have policies, standards, and procedures. So there is not a state law that requires us to have digital accessibility to require WCAG 2.1 level AA, but we do have policy that enforces the federal law. One of which being policy 1650 for accessibility and reasonable accommodations and modifications. That is an ad guide policy that is publicly available if you wanted to look that up. Additionally, procedure 1650.02 for accessibility and reasonable modifications. That is a procedure that pairs with ADA Title II. So it's very focused on our digital content and what we must do as state employees to make our content accessible. For applications, we have the SOM Digital Accessibility Standards. So we did adopt the WCAG 2.1 level AA as our standard for digital accessibility in May of last year. So we're coming up on about a 1-year mark. All SOM digital content must at minimum conform to WCAG 2.1 level AA. And for our applications, we have the State of Michigan Digital Standards for Websites and Applications that not only has accessibility requirements, but also branding and other technical standards that are built within that requirement. So for contracts, going back to policy, I did miss a topic. Prior to May of last year, we did have for over 10 years WCAG 2.0 level AA as our standard. By state policy. So it's not something new, it's something that we've been working on for quite some time. It was just a matter of bringing it up to the federally specified version, as well as ensuring that we're communicating that to all of our agencies. For contracts, we knew that we had a lot to bite off because we realized several of our contracts did specify that 2.0 level right in them. So we're working on a bit of a big picture effort. We're lucky that we have centralized IT because that means for a lot of our contracts, we own them in DTMB. So we can take a centralized effort to go back, look at those contracts, and renegotiate with vendors to get the new technical standard into the contracts. We're addressing language in new and work in progress contracts now. And then about probably 5 months or so ago, we sent a notice to vendors to let them know that our standard had changed and to collect additional information regarding their current level of compliance or willingness to comply to help our agencies and business owners make decisions on next steps to either bring their systems into compliance or figure out what their path will look like to ensure compliance. Application review, this one's probably the nearest and dearest to my heart because I am the manager of the team that does the digital accessibility testing. We review all state of Michigan applications against WCAG 2.1 level AA. Just last year, we expanded our digital accessibility testing team. With this rule change, we determined that we did not have enough capacity to review all of our state of Michigan applications. And we refined our intake process, seeing the influx ahead on the horizon. We identified and prioritized systems using a risk-based approach, looking at the number of external users that they had along with their last known review status against WCAG. So this next slide has a visual on it, and I'll talk through this graphic. So we discussed an application review approach. With leadership, we determined that we wanted to review all of our external facing systems, and in an order of which, starting with the highest number of external users and the lowest level of known WCAG compliance. So we grouped them into 3 priorities, one of which being priority 1, which is an external system that has 10,000 or more users and it had either issues found in the last review or it may have never been reviewed. So that's our first chunk, and we're working on that from highest number of external users to lowest number of external users. Our priority 2 grouping is that same. It either had issues found or had not been reviewed, but it's between 0 and 10,000 external users. And for priority 3, that's where either no issues were found in their last review or it had any number of external users and passed the 2.1 or the 2.0 last known review. So for application remediation, so once we test applications, we send out a review report with findings to the business owners. The application support teams then begin their remediation efforts upon receiving findings. They work on fixes either in-house or they reach out to vendors for externally supported systems to get the fixes in the work. They remediate and they come back to us to have their system retested until our team says there are no longer any findings. So we are also working on resources. We are not the only ones working on resources, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the resources my team's working on as well as other teams have. So for all employees, we do have a digital information accessibility coordinator, and because he's in the room, I'm just going to point him out. He's at the back of the room. His name's John Estel, and he is wearing a suit and has a beard and glasses. He has been wandering around, so you may or may not have connected with him, but he is a resource for all state of Michigan employees. About 2 years ago, probably, is when we created that position to provide a guidance for all executive branch agencies and give direction on how they should be creating accessible content. Additionally, we have an intranet site with guides and resources for our employees. And Michigan Department of Civil Rights recently procured a contract to develop training on how to create accessible content, and that will make training available to all of our employees and contractors as well to ensure that they have the skills and the knowledge on how to do that. For our developers, we do have something called digital guidelines, which is a design framework. So if application developers in-house are to use that, they should already have the tools they need to create an accessible application right from the start. Not all systems are compatible with our design framework, but it's also a great resource if it is a non-compatible system to get some insights for developers. We're also working on acquiring additional tools to make sure all of our application developers can start testing earlier in the process, including having their own screen readers, at least in a few of our agency services shops. And that is all I have. Questions?
So my company uses Microsoft Teams. We use it a lot. And now we're starting to, for example, we can pick a signer on the meeting. You know, while we're in the middle of a meeting, during a presentation, and sometimes when people pull up their slides in the Zoom meeting, the person who is signing or the interpreter goes away. They're not visible anymore. So we have to modify that. Maybe as a suggestion, we could do that to Teams. Maybe somebody from your company, we could have a way to keep the signer, to keep the interpreter in picture on the screen while the PowerPoint slides are being, shared. So we don't have to go back to the participant list and add them and pin them again so that I can see them. So I'm wondering if there's maybe better technology or a better way to use that software program?
Yeah, so I'm personally not super familiar with how to ensure that the interpreter is on screen at all times in a Teams meeting, though I do know that there is something called a town hall event, where I believe that there is more success with keeping an individual on screen with their video feed as well as their content on screen. So there might be an opportunity to explore using a different format of Microsoft Teams. When we initially had Microsoft Teams come to us with all the different options, we did find, this was years back, that it had some accessibility issues, so we procured Zoom instead for ensuring that we were hosting meetings in an accessible way, because at the time we knew that it could accommodate that need. But I have seen that Microsoft has made several strides and improvements over the years. I'm not sure if they've fixed everything, But they are open to enhancement requests. If your company has a contract with them, typically they have a way to use their credits to submit a request to alter or enhance their product to make it a better experience for all users.
I have a question. My name is Nadia. I know you touched on it earlier. I can't remember who it was, so I apologize. But like the biases that come with AI. I mean, just the other day when I was using Microsoft, I said disability in my paragraph, and it said, "Warning: you may be using offensive language." And so when the data that it's based on is taken from like ableist or racist or sexist data, how do we go about addressing that? Like, what is being done about that? Because AI can be very useful, but when we are, again, pulling from something that is corrupted, how do we go about, like, is it even, again, useful at that point if we're pulling from something that is kind of tainted, I guess?
That's a great question, and this is Sarahelizabeth. I will chime in about that. I'm sorry that my existence is offensive to the AI. It can take its feelings and go talk to its therapist about that, because that's not my problem. My disability is not offensive in its existence, and how do we teach AI that? We can give it better language models. That's one option. We can give it guardrails that tell it, don't say this, which it's really fun to get the AI models to ignore their guardrails and tell you stuff they're not supposed to say. If you haven't played that game, I encourage you to. It's good fun. But ultimately, it's why we still need a human in the loop on most workflows. And so there's the question of how do we make the AI better? That we should technologically be working on how do we teach the AI to be okay with saying blind and not continuously rephrase me as visually impaired or visually handicapped or partially sighted. Like, I'm blind. I get that other people are those words, but that's not my word. Don't change it on me. And we need to teach AI not to force its changes. But we also need to teach humans the AI literacy to recognize that, oh, you know, I noticed that everything it's spitting out is saying visually impaired, and I'm writing text for the American Foundation for the Blind. I'm actually okay with saying blind. I'm going to go change those back, and we need to have the tech literacy to recognize that right now AI cannot handle the nuance of race and disability and other sensitive identity subjects, and that we still need to refer to the actual human's identity when talking about a specific human and make those adjustments back for the time being.
Hello there. My name is Matt Benkarski. I actually work for Treasury Department, so I have a question in regards to digital accessibility training. My team is kind of responsible right now for developing training materials, not only for kind of what is digital accessibility, but also the practical application of actually doing it, Treasury employees. So I guess my question would be, what are like some key takeaways or some key techniques that you would start trying to train people who have no knowledge of digital accessibility, but like are eager to actually do it and want to do the work? We have people that are going to be champions that are going to be leading this work. And I kind of want to be able to bring something back to them as far as like what are some like actionable steps that they can take like going forward. Thank you.
Yep. This is Dana. So each agency has their own resources, so I don't want to point you away from those resources. Definitely start there. I do know that I think Treasury is one who has compiled a lot of their own resources that are really good. As far as the enterprise-wide resources, I don't know for sure when they're going to be available. There will be a high-level what is digital accessibility training module that we're hoping we can get required for all state employees. We're not sure yet. We're working on that. But then there will also be specific training modules for how to create accessible Word document, how to create accessible PDFs. So those modules will be coming. Making sure you have the tools that you need to do your job. So getting maybe some plugins, some browser plugins that Site Improve is one that's currently whitelisted that can be obtained. AxDev tools, and some of this might be getting a little bit in the weeds. If you're working on PDFs, you'll need more than just basic reader. You'll need likely Acrobat Pro, so procuring that license will be some steps that you'll need to take before you get into it. And then if you go to the digital experience site, John Estel again has walked into the room, so I'm going to call him out again. He maintains some resources on that site underneath the accessibility page. It can be found through the bridge through our SharePoint site.
May I add to that just a little bit? This is Kellie Blackwell speaking. And when you're making accessible digital content, one of the things that I get asked all the time is, how basic does it have to be? Can it include graphics and things like that? Yes, you can make things accessible that also have a beautiful visual appearance and still be accessible. So I just wanted to add that.
My question's for Dana. My name's Alan Hale. I have a few different hats, but one of them is I serve at a volunteer capacity in my community of Ferndale, Michigan. We had it kind of play out in front of us as a small commission where our city website was due for a refresh about a year or two ago. City's mission of supporting small local businesses was meant that they selected a web developer who didn't have an understanding or expertise in accessibility, and kind of against our commission's warnings, they opted for an overlay. What is the state doing to educate use of overlays? Is there a blanket policy on overlays, and how is that being communicated to smaller municipalities in Michigan who don't have the resources or acumen to tackle that?
So this is Dana. So at a state policy level, in our next version, which we haven't released yet because it's still going through approvals, we are going to have a statement that says accessibility overlays are not permitted on state of Michigan applications. As we know, they are not something that truly allows equal access. So we are prohibiting them at the state level. For communicating that to local government entities, we don't have a means to do that easily at this point in time. So I would just ask that you all spread the word. It's been known for a while throughout the industry. Please don't use them.
Hello, my name is Robin Gilbert, and my question is about the contracts. And when you talked to the vendors for the state of Michigan, and you let them know that accessibilities will be changing, and then you're looking at current contracts that you're looking at, how do you let them know that? Okay, so like I'm looking at a vendor and they're like, yes, we're accessible. But you're like, are you accessible as of the April 24th, 2025 version? And they're like, how is DTMB helping other state agencies to make sure that we are getting those contractors compliant with us? Because like, I'm just Robin. You know, when we're looking at contracts to make sure that we're fully compliant and accessible.
Yep, so this is Dana. So for contracts, there are two major areas of DTMB that own a good chunk of them. There's DTMB Central Procurement and DTMB Financial Services. My team's been working very closely with DTMB Central Procurement, and DTMB Central Procurement's been working very closely with DTMB Financial Services, and they are both taking approaches to look at their contracts and figure out how to get the new language in there. I believe that information trickles out to agencies who have local procurement power as well. But the big thing to understand is IT should be procured through DTMB. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I please have this, Robin, sorry, one more follow-up question. What about contracts that were made prior, but were like on the 2 or 3 year extensions, automatic extensions? How do we make sure that those vendors are coming up to compliance with us through your department?
So through my department, we are working on reviewing all of our contracts and saying what language do we currently have in them. We have buyers is the role that's working on that. There are buyers aligned with each contract. So they're looking at each contract and determining what language do we have in there now. Is it our current language or is it outdated? And then we're reaching out to the vendor if it's outdated, and then we're asking them to put the new language in and bring their product into compliance. For new products, we ask for a PAT or a VPAT, a voluntary product accessibility template, to let us know to state at the time we're procuring so we understand where their current level is. what known issues they have or what current level of compliance that they state that they meet. That's in our contract process when we're procuring something new. But in the retroactive effort, we are working on just getting the new language in all the contracts, and if they push back, we address each of those individually at that time, working with the business owners within the agencies.
Right, and not seeing any more questions right now, please feel to bring those forward. I just have a couple questions for some of the panelists.
I see one more hand. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have one.
I'm sorry, but can you explain what you mean by overlay? I don't understand what that means.
You guys might have more disdain.
Sure.
Very much disdain.
So, do overlays exist for other disabilities? They do, right? An overlay is sold to companies who make websites as a product that in a single line of code is going to remediate all of your accessibility products and make your website fully accessible. And it does so by putting a buffer in between your website and the user that allows them to adjust the font size, to choose speak this text, to choose things that on the surface are very accessibility friendly, but it does it in its own custom branded way and does not natively interface with assistive technologies such as screen readers, such as screen magnifiers, such as other text-to-speech processes. And so it changes how the website is used by people with disabilities in a way that it's so cumbersome to learn a different system for every single website you touch that we would rather they not get in the middle of it and just make the websites work with our assistive technology. Please. Did I miss anything, Kelly?
I will just reiterate what Sarahelizabeth said and say, please don't ever use them. They're not user-friendly.
And they are sold to people who really are trying to do a good thing, right?
Yeah.
On the bill of sale sounds like this is going to solve all of your problems, and it just takes raising awareness that the user experience has consistently been. It does not solve our problems nearly as well as native accessibility would.
Hi, my name is Sean Forbes. I'm a leader in the deaf community and have been for many years now. I'm really fascinated with AI technology, but I'm finding that a lot of things that we're talking about don't really relate to the deaf community. Captions are great, they're improving, they're getting better, but there's still a lack of understanding with what's going on in videos, a lack of understanding with sign language. So where could the deaf community do more to get involved with some of these discussions that you guys are having about the rules and the different things that are available? Because I'm, working with, it seems like more catered to people with other disabilities, not necessarily the deaf community. Thank you.
Anyone on the panel have a thought on that?
Say the one piece that I've seen in our cross-disability AI study are calls from the deaf community to not let AI making captions be declared good enough and take away the right of access to ASL interpretation. And I think it's important for every disability community to keep being clear about what they need for best access so that as tools come and provide some access, they don't usurp best access because somebody doesn't know that something better is still needed.
I will add, this is Kellie Blackwell speaking from a point of access from my former employer. Any trainings that Michigan Disability Rights Coalition held publicly, they just automatically included ASL interpretation as well as CART captioning. That was just a minimum of what was put forth. Doesn't necessarily deal with AI specifically, but I think having those standards in place is helpful for access.
I have a statement again. I just want to add, historically, the deaf community has just been left behind. And I am very passionate about how we can really catch up. Yeah, there are a lot of things that need to be done. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So I want our community to be able to go into Starbucks, and if the person is talking and they don't understand, that we have captions ready, because sometimes we're in loud environments, just like the AI captioning, that doesn't work sometimes. And if we want to get an interpreter, I mean, deaf community members, a lot of us are employed. We have a high employment rate. So paying for that ourselves, that really needs to be done in a space where the deaf community can feel on par. I just wanted to throw that little tidbit out. Thank you.
Okay. Dana, I have a quick question for you. Sounds like you've been doing this with the state for a while. Have you seen any shifts in attitudes in prioritizing digital accessibility in the departments?
I think I thankfully get to be in the position where I'm getting to help drive the shift. In communicating to all these different agencies and departments, some people are saying this is news to me, but I feel like I'm getting more of we know as opposed to this is news to me in recent years as I'm going out to continue to communicate this message to each agency and department. I mentioned we have centralized IT, so we're taking a centralized enterprise-based approach, and I know that civil rights also has a few things out there that are self-evaluations that are a work in process. So agencies are definitely looking inward at themselves and at their materials and everything they have to see where they need to make strides.
Thank you, Dana. And Sarahelizabeth, in your presentation, you talked a little bit about transparency, and I wondered if you could just elaborate a little bit more on how transparency plays a role in the launch of AI systems.
Yeah, one of the things that we're really calling for and encourage you all to join in with is the need for there to be transparent disclosure when AI is being used all of the time. We're entitled to request reasonable accommodations in the workplace, but if you don't know that your employer is monitoring your computer with some AI software, can you request a human review as a reasonable accommodation because your disabled use pattern is different than a non-disabled person's use pattern? If a company is reviewing applications with AI, again, you're entitled to ask for an accommodation, but if it's not disclosed that AI is going to screen all of these resumes, can you ask for an accommodation where you get a chance to explain a gap in employment history during disability training, right? Like, if AI is just gonna throw it out and you never know AI is being used, you can't even meaningfully request that accommodation proactively at the right time until the harm has been done and you haven't been given the job. So I think it's really important that as AI gets implemented, there are disclosures to all of the people who interact with the AI that AI is part of the system, that it's being used for evaluation or for tracking or for workflow, so that people have that information to take action on.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Sarahelizabeth. Kellie, from a disability advocate standpoint, what are the most persistent policy barriers that you see in preventing people from getting assistive technology? I know you mentioned healthcare and education. Is there a persistent barrier that seems to come?
A persistent barrier for assistive technology access, yes, healthcare is a bigger one, certainly, and education. And I think there's things happening. So there's, it's the, how do I want to say this? There's such large systems that the details of the importance of access are not always there, and the informed choice for access is not always there when you're talking about bigger systems of healthcare or education. So the systems themselves are barriers. I don't know if that answered the question, but I think just starting to have those conversations about assistive technology and what folks can do on the front end to ensure access for individuals. I'll just use my own experience as an example as it relates to healthcare. This year was the first time that I can actively remember when I get a call for setting up a procedure, the central scheduling asks, is there, and I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but do you have an access concern that would prevent you from accessing this appointment adequately or something like that? And so then I was able to share with them that I have I don't necessarily have any concerns about access as it relates to equipment, but that I'm blind and could use some additional supports there, so.
Thank you. And Dana, just for the audience's sake, when you talk about remediation of a website, what kind of timeframes are you looking at? And then also, we knowing web pages aren't static, what kind of follow-up is needed to continually see that something's not been added as inaccessible?
So this is Dana. So from the application perspective, so I'm going to kind of look at it from a content perspective and an application perspective when I talk about this. Timeframes for remediation, we're looking at the functionality of the system and code that needs to be modified in order to make the application or the mobile app accessible. That is what we are testing for, the functionality of the application. Then the teams take that back, and it depends on how long it's going to take them to remediate. So for our testing process, our checkpoint is that we test things before they go into production. However, for this requirement where we're going from 2.0 to 2.1 as the federal requirement, we now realize we have to test everything that was in existence up to that 2.1 level now. So some that were already compliant at the 2.0 level, they have a much shorter road ahead of them. It's just maybe one sprint worth of work, but some that maybe weren't compliant have a long road ahead of them, maybe months worth of work, we will see. So it will vary drastically depending on the size, the complexity, and everything, all the factors, all the variables of the system as far as time frame for remediation. We are driving all external systems to remediate prior to the compliance date of April 24th of 2026. For the content that gets uploaded later, there has to be a training element where people who are responsible for maintaining the content on public-facing systems need to know how to create that content accessibly. We can build guardrails into applications. We can build warnings, flags, errors, and we do our best to do that as application developers, as business owners, to make sure that there are guardrails so that once content is published, it is just accessible out the door. However, it doesn't mean that all of our systems are perfect. There are still room for content authors to upload content that is not accessible. So there's also that training element and understanding that if you have access to post content externally, you need to know how to post it accessibly as well.
Thank you. And Sarah, you mentioned autonomous vehicles and AI benefiting people with disabilities. Can you talk a little bit more about the benefits of AI for people with disabilities?
Sure. For folks with disabilities who are non-drivers, such as myself, the promise of an accessible autonomous vehicle that will just come to my door and drive me where I want to go. My human driver's in the room, and I adore you, but right, it would be super convenient if a robot could do that and I didn't have to bother an actual human to spend their time driving me around. Right now, we're seeing issues with the accessibility of autonomous vehicles in that some AV companies have their solution to accessible vehicles for folks with mobility impairments, wheelchair users, to be a human driver in a separate system. And so the cars are not coming off the line accessible for a broad range of disabilities. So it offers a lot of promise for a non-driver to get more access to driving in a country that's very much set up for everyone to drive their own vehicle. But we also have to make sure that we're not leaving our neighbors in the dust as systems that are built for one party are excluding another yet again.
Good point. Okay, well, I want to have some questions in the back.
I just had one question, and I'm sorry, this is Robin Gilbert again. Since we're with DTMB and we're Michigan Department of, is there any intent to put on any of our state of Michigan websites a link that individuals in the public can just say, I'm having trouble here, and not have it be a full-blown complaint, but just a link that says, can you look at this?
So this is Dana. There are some resources where if they post it and it could be confusing, even though it passes accessibility checks, some do go ahead and post, if you need help with this resource, contact this email box or contact this phone number. That's not across the board something that everyone does. It is something that can be done, but it is not something that is required to be done at this time.
Okay, seeing no more questions, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are looking to get 2 or 3 policy recommendations. We have had staff taking notes and to capture practical solutions that have been discussed today. And these will be reviewed by the Michigan Department of Civil Rights Commission, the department and partners to drive any changes in the state of Michigan. We now have a 15-minute break before the lunch plenary begins. Feel free to walk around in exhibit tables. And for those who are feeling just a little overwhelmed, there is a sensory room located on the first floor. Just look for the sign or ask for a member. And thanks for joining us today.